get Steve Merrill on the line from Pro Sports Info. Just join him right there. We've had him on for the last season and a half, and the insight is amazing. ProSportsInfo.com. This one jumps out at me. Not that the line is skewed in any way that I think I could take advantage of it, but just Miami going to Toledo. Miami being one of the few programs, elite programs, not saying that the current team's elite, but elite programs, names, brands that travel on the road to a group of five. Appalachian State, they had one scheduled at Arkansas State, this one at Toledo. We had a Miami blogger on last night who joins us on a regular basis explaining Miami not the money in the coffers of an Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame, Alabama. And that's one of the reasons why they take those trips and don't pay for those to come their way. But it's only a 10.5-point spread last I looked with Toledo at home against Miami. Of course, the two teams played last year. The Rockets held tight. Miami blew them out in the fourth quarter for a late cover there at 52-30. I don't know if you caught the rest of that, Steve, but Miami at Toledo, 10.5-point game.
Yeah, Miami's a team that I came into the season feeling was a bit overrated. I thought their 10-win season last year made them look a little bit better than they really were. If you look at some of their pure statistics, they were not a 10-win team. And I played against them with LSU back in week one. And I'm not even that big on LSU this season. I just thought getting a SEC underdog, in a non-conference matchup against an overrated ACC team was appealing. Miami was in an interesting spot last week. They were a 62-point favorite against Savannah State. And they did bounce back off that loss, 77-0, very similar to what Michigan did, as I mentioned earlier. They're now really facing their first true road game of the season, of course. They have Florida International on deck next week at home, so they should be focused for this game. I think all is said and done, they do have a class edge against Toledo. But Toledo's a very strong home field. They're one of the better MAC programs of the past several decades. I think if they were catching Miami in a bit more of a flat spot, they really could be dangerous in this game. But the Hurricanes should be pretty focused. They had an easy game last week, and they don't have much of a look ahead on deck.
In a situation like this, I notice it's a noon game Eastern time. Would you feel slightly different about this game if it was a night game at a place like Toledo that could be a little tricky?
Yeah, I think that probably would help the home field advantage. It gets the fans into the game a little bit more. Obviously, you're not going to have a real ruckus, arena at noon on a Saturday morning, basically, as tailgating just isn't much of a part of it. But it's funny, though, you used to hear all these rumors back in the day about LSU and Baton Rouge, how you can't win down there at night. And I remember I ran the numbers 10, 15 years ago, and LSU actually was a losing play against the spread of night games for a while. So I think sometimes that's factored into the point spread too much. Even though it is probably an element that plays a role in somewhat of the home field advantage.
We mentioned Toledo and Miami playing last year in Miami. I looked at that box score last night during our Miami segment. And again, the Rockets outplayed them in the first half. They led by 6. I'm guessing they were probably a low 20s underdog, 20-21. I don't remember what the spread was, but Miami put up 28 points in the fourth quarter. They won by 22 points. Any thought given to in a lot of these non-conference games, obviously these teams will sign contracts for back-to-back home and homes. What happened the previous year?
Yeah, last year's game was very interesting, actually. Miami was only a 2-touchdown favorite at home. They were a 13.5-point favorite in that game. They trailed 16-10 at halftime. They end up winning 52-30. So they're actually laying a bigger number this year on the road because they are only a 13.5-point favorite. They would have only been about a 6-7-point road favorite last year. So the line is inflated, and yes, they ended up winning the game easy. But like you said, Toledo was capable of hanging there, and it is something I like to look at. Obviously, you have a little bit of a history here with a lot of the same players in these home and homes, and the revenge situation is often a good element. Had Miami lost that game last year, I think they would have been even more focused this year. You can make an argument they won by 22, they might overlook them, but the fact that it was somewhat of a dogfight and they trailed at halftime is another reason I think this is a pretty focused spot for Miami, especially with just Florida International on deck next week.